Welcome, everyone, to the Captive Audience. It is July 15th, and I'm Kevin Horn. I'm here today, very fortunate to have Representative Kevin Mannix, who I think we've known each other for over 20 years, which is hard to believe. But then you've been at this even longer than me, but you're at it again in the state legislature, and you're definitely one of the most inventive, creative, and thoughtful legislators that we've ever had. And we're so lucky to have you on the show. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be with you.
And I do want to remind folks you're in District 21, which is kind of, it looks, I've got the map in front of me, and it kind of looks like it's Kaiser and sort of North
North
Salem.
Salem. If you're a Salemite, I would say it runs from State Street north, from the river out to 45th Avenue, roughly, and then it's all of Kaiser. So Kaiser and North Salem, basically.
Yeah, and it's an important area actually of the state too, because we've had a lot of swing districts in this state.
Yes, in fact, I like to remind legislators that there are 60 seats in the House, and 36 seats are held by Democrats, so they've got a supermajority. In all 36 of those districts, there's a Democrat plurality, or even stronger. There are 21 seats held by Republicans where there's a Republican plurality, but there are three districts where there is a Democrat plurality, but the seat is held by a Republican. And I'm one of those. My district has a Democrat plurality, but with the support of the voters from House District 21, here I am, reaching out to my co legislators in a collegial fashion. And I think that's important, trying to get things done. And I think that's what's worked for me.
Yeah, and I think you've always been a get it done kind of guy because there's so many important pieces of legislation you've dealt with over the years. And just to remind folks, the initiative process, which we're going to also talk about tonight, you're one of the fathers there of Measure 11, really, which a lot of folks took it for granted until we found ourselves in the middle of a crime wave recent years, and so you've dramatically affected the course of our legal system here in this state.
Well, thank you for bringing that up because I like to let folks know that in my earlier 10 years in the legislature, because I left in January 2001 and then came back 22 years later in January 2023, uh, I pushed through 135 pieces of legislation. So I was a very successful legislator at getting things done in the legislature. But in 1991 and in 1993, I tried to get us to adjust the weak sentencing guidelines. I always like to point out that the guideline sentence for first degree rape was 22 months, an abysmally low sentence. And that was just an example of how the whole structure was very weak. And I was promised, oh, we're going to get to it. We're going to enhance sentences. So in 1991, I pushed through more legislation than any other member of the House and Senate. I couldn't get a 1 minute hearing on strengthening sentencing guidelines. We come back in 1993. I also, again, got more bills through the House and Senate than anybody else. I couldn't get a hearing on adding 1 minute to the sentencing guidelines. Excuse me. So, went to the voters, 1994, Measure 11, and we established mandatory minimum prison sentences for violent crime. And by the way, those sentences were really based on what national averages were, and our minimums were very reasonable, 100 months for first degree rape. And what happened is we got it through with a 66% yes vote from the voters. And
Wow.
we forced the criminal justice system to be adjusted so that law enforcement knew then that if you can get the evidence and convict someone for a violent crime, they will serve the full sentence, the mandatory minimum sentence. And judges had no opportunity to do less, and the parole board had no power to release anybody early. And for the next 10 years, Oregon led the nation in our rate of reduction of violent crime because we were taking bad people off the streets
Yeah.
and keeping them incarcerated. So We actually did 3 initiatives in that November, and all 3 of them passed. So here we are today, and I'm looking at a legislature that in 2022, before I came back, passed what they called bail reform. And
Yeah.
bail reform was, I'm going to try to be gentle here, was a joke
Yeah.
because Oregon, there was this national bail reform movement. Oregon had reformed its bail system in the 1980s before I went to the legislature. How did
Wow.
we reform it? We got rid of bail bondsmen and we got rid of bounty hunters. And we said instead of paying, say, 10% of your bail to a bail bondsman and never getting it back if you showed up, no, you post your 10% with the state. And if you show up, you get it back. And if you don't show up, we'll use state officials to track you down, not bail bondsmen. So we reformed the system. But
Yeah.
as part of this wave of reform in 2022, the legislature passed what's called SB 48, which basically stripped away the power of judges to set bail in most instances,
Hmm.
and which also said there's a presumption that you will be released on your own recognizance, meaning no bail,
Yeah.
after you're booked. And so we've ended up with a list of over 150 felonies where the presumption is when you show up and you're arrested and you're booked, you will be released without being arraigned in front of a judge. The traditional system is when you're arrested for a felony or a Class A misdemeanor, you would be held, you'd be arraigned in front of a circuit judge who would look at the charges, the evidence, your criminal record, and consider the safety of the public, the safety of the victim, and whether you're going to show up for trial. And the judge could set bail and release you or not set bail. That was mostly stripped away by this Senate Bill 48 under the guise of bail reform. So right now we have people who can commit burglary, auto theft, identity theft,
Wow.
theft in the first degree, get arrested, and as soon as they are booked and their picture is taken, they are released by a release officer. That's the title of the position that was created. There's your mentality.
Weird. Yeah.
Presumption is you're being released. And I know I'm speaking a lot about this, but that is an example of the bad thinking that has infected the legislative process on public safety. So in 2023, when I first came back, we tried to reform that. We couldn't get a hearing on a reform bill.
Sounds familiar. Deja vu, huh?
2024, couldn't get a hearing on a reform bill, and we had the legislation to reform it. 2025, couldn't get a hearing on a reform bill. Well, darn it, I'm going back to the voters. And so we started a petition July 15, and it says we are ending catch and release. Anyone who is arrested for a felony or a Class A misdemeanor will be held until that person is arraigned in front of a circuit court judge. And in many cases might be held until trial. And if they're in all of these cases, though, people say the counties can't afford it. Oh, no. The state needs to reimburse the county for the cost of incarceration.
Yeah.
So we're helping our county sheriffs afford this. We're giving the judges renewed authority to set bail so that they can decide if bail ought to be set or to refuse to allow bail. What we're doing is saying you're going to be held accountable again if you're charged with these crimes. And we're putting a judge in charge of this process with no presumptive release on your own recognizance.
Yeah.
It is a dramatic turnabout. And at the same time, for those who say, again, the counties won't be able to afford incarcerating these people, no. The state needs to pay for this. And why do I say that? I know the property tax limitations have affected our counties and our cities.
Yeah.
Well, in response to that, for education, the state took over funding the public schools. And there's separate questions as to how well we're doing all of that, but the state is doing that. We just increased funding for schools by 11% this biennium.
Yeah.
But we never stepped in to help the counties with their public safety issues with the new restrictions on property taxes. And what is the largest element of every county budget? Public safety, the sheriff's department, all of that.
And it's the kind of thing that citizens actually expect the government to do. There might be a lot of things on the government's list. This one, they're like, why aren't you doing that?
Exactly. So we're in a situation now where the deadline for putting this all together and getting the signatures is next July. So we have a year. And assuming we put it on the ballot, it'll be on the ballot in November 2026. And the voters get to say, well, no, when someone's been arrested for these serious crimes, we're not just setting them free and whistling in the dark. We're saying we want a judge to look at this person and consider what the person's charged with, et cetera, as I already said, and decide whether or not the person should be held pending trial.
That's amazing that the law was changed to presume. I mean, it's one thing to presume innocence in a trial, but it's another thing to presume release.
Well, you hit the nail on the head. And the interesting thing was, this was done during what I call the COVID session. The legislators were meeting online rather than in person. And the only time they actually showed up in person, because they had to pass a bill, was the floor of the House, the floor of the Senate, with masks on and social distancing. So that was the worst possible situation for someone to pull off what I think is a boondoggle of negative reform of the public safety system. And it passed on the basis of, oh, we're reforming the bail system just like everybody else. No, we're not. We're screwing up the bail system. Yep. And I think voters now have a chance to push back. And so that's one of the things I'm working on post last session.
So what it means when you file, like you filed that today, is that you filed to get a petition approved, right?
And what we have to do right away is we need to gather over 1,000 voter signatures on this initial petition. And folks who want to check with me about that can email me at kevin@mannixlawfirm.com, kevin@mannixlawfirm.com, and we'll send those folks information. But the idea is we have to turn in 1,000 verified signatures on the petition. Then the ballot title process begins, where the Attorney General drafts a ballot title. It goes through that whole ballot title process. Ultimately, it goes to the Supreme Court for a final judgment. After that, we can start circulating to gather the signatures we need to get on the ballot. So we started early because this process may take 5 months until we can start gathering the nitty-gritty signatures. And legally, we need almost 118,000 signatures, meaning we'll want to gather 150,000 plus to get on the ballot for November 2026. But it started July 15th.
Started July 15th today. And also, isn't it true that, there's a meaningful fight over ballot titles because you have some somewhat hostile individuals to this legislation that you want to get on the ballot. And they have a recent history of making the ballot title such that it's unlikely to pass or even get enough signatures.
Well, opponents will try to distort the ballot title. They'll assert that it should read a certain way, but then they also can litigate the ballot title, challenge the Attorney General's draft ballot title, then challenge the Attorney General's final certified ballot title, take that to the Supreme Court, litigate it in the Supreme Court. All of this delays the petition process. And by the way, as a separate matter, I think we have strangled the capability of citizens to do initiatives. Now, I can cope with it and work my way through it, but don't get me going on that. That's a separate reform. But you ought to be able to, if your draft language of an initiative, your ag language, is 100 words or fewer, you should be able to just print those and put that on the petition and have people sign the petition and forget about the ballot title at the time. Then others can go through the ballot title process later. But that's another reform for later. Right now, I'm coping with the current system, and we're ready to do it. Plus, Kevin, we also got a second initiative that we filed today.
Tell us about that, because I know you've had some success on this issue, but at the same time, there's an absurdity, isn't there? A fundamental absurdity about the estate tax in Oregon.
Yeah, the estate tax we call the death tax.
Yeah.
Because it's imposed when you die. And in the last 22 years, in 2002, all 50 states had death taxes. And the death tax system for the states was decoupled from the federal system. In the last 23 years, 38 states have repealed their death taxes. There's 12 states left, and Oregon is one of them. We used to be tied for the worst with Massachusetts, but Massachusetts just improved theirs. They moved their exemption up to $2 million. The Oregon exemption is $1 million. And as soon as you hit that level, you're looking at a 10% tax, which quickly gets up to 16%. Now, you've already paid property taxes and income taxes throughout your life. And now, as you pass away, we're taxing you again. And that affects the capability of people to pass their property on to their family. So I did have success in the 2023 session to amend the law to provide a generous exemption for family owned farms and ranches and woodlands, a $15 million exemption. Very proud of that. And I convinced my Democrat friends who are the best stewards of the environment. If we're out there in the natural resources world, we want families to still be taking care of these properties. And they have to have been in the family, they have to stay in the family, and then you get a generous exemption so that you don't have to sell the farm or remortgage it. There's, Century Farms, or you'd have to get a new mortgage. Anyway, it worked. And we've actually even tightened it up this past regular session, the 2025 session. Just the day before the end of the session, I got through legislation, which, based on accountants and lawyers coming in, we improved the language even more to make it an airtight provision.
For farmers,
so I was able to get
that, right?
Pardon?
For
farmers and ranchers and people, families that own woodlands. What I couldn't get is any other reform of the estate tax. And it was clear to me that the legislative leadership were not interested in doing anything to help all the rest of the folks. And these days, if you have a retirement plan and if you have a house, you could well be running into above that $1 million level. And of course, it's a bad tax anyway. I think it should be repealed. So we have an initiative to repeal the death tax and just say, let's stop doing this. And that would be, and again, it would be on the ballot in November 2026. And it would relate to deaths occurring on or after January 1, 2027. Say enough is enough. Let's join the 38 states that don't have death taxes and not be among the 12 that do and be the worst of the 12.
Yeah, and it hasn't been raised, right, in like 20 years or something like that.
The exemption has not been raised since the beginning. And if you just applied the CPI, it'd be close to $2 million. Couldn't get anything like that. There's a whole bunch of issues with the death tax that could reform it, make it better. And nothing happened other than dealing with natural resources, property, and woodlands. And David Brock Smith got a bill through to improve the language even for small woodland owners of small woodlands. So we took care of natural resources. But how about all those other folks?
Yeah.
So that is an awful tax anyway. Philosophically, I think it's bad.
Yeah.
But we also have the worst one in the nation. So let's get rid of it, because we're also giving retirees or people who've developed their business and are successful, we're asking them to leave. And we have so many people that move out as they get older, they're successful, because California has no estate tax. Nevada has no estate tax.
Yeah.
Idaho has no estate tax. Arizona doesn't. You could go to a whole bunch of states out here in the West with no death tax. And basically, we're asking them to leave by having a death tax.
There was an article, and I think you guys were involved with this too, but it was a report Willamette Week covered that I remember from a number of months ago that laid out exactly what's happening with migration of 65 plus age population, and they're leaving because they can't afford, or as I think your colleague in the State House said, Bobby Levy, Representative Bobby Levy, Oregon is the most frightening place to die, and people know it, so they don't want to have this, tremendous hit. And by the way, this isn't an outrageous amount. $1 million, it's like, oh, that's just for millionaires. Well, if you've got a home that is the median price for a home in, say, the Portland metro area, you're talking about $450,000, $500,000 at this point is the median price. And then you add on a 401k from a regular job. And if you have more than, say, $600,000 in that over the time of work, you have just exceeded $1 million and you are in trouble now.
And Oregon does not have what's called portability. So if one of the couple members dies, and every other state that has a death tax says, well, the first person's exemption will carry over to the second person. So it could be 2 million, not Oregon. So one person dies, the other person receives, say, just under $1 million from the estate. That other person suddenly has a $2 million estate. And they're guaranteed to have the death tax because there was no portability of the exemption from one to the other. And we're the only state that doesn't have portability. The 11 other states do. So there's a lot of stupid things in our estate tax. And my view is it's stupid enough to just get rid of it, have a clean break, and let people, take care of their families, their kids and their grandkids, and don't have to go to a great expense. Because if you're anywhere near $1 million, you're going to have to, the Department of Revenue is going to say, well, you're going to need an appraisal on your home. How about your car? How about your retirement fund? Let's take a look. And I'm aware of a situation recently. I have to be careful how much I say, but a woman who died and thought her estate certainly was well under $1 million. No, it was $1.7 million. And the estate tax kicked in for that $700,000. So people will be surprised. And again, we can send information to folks. You write to me at kevin@mannixlawfirm.com. Very soon we'll have a pack and we'll have another way to reach folks. But early on, I'd love to hear from people who want to help with this.
Yeah, and you guys also have a phone number at the law firm there where people can call and kind of get, if they want to, if they prefer to help. And by the way, I think one of the things that's very important is it takes money to succeed at these things. And so one of the things you can do, right, is you can donate towards this effort. And then in turn, it's literally like a return on investment. When you take the tax hit that you'd face, a bunch of donations from folks that might experience this could be a very valuable way to protect themselves.
And thank you for that. And we will be raising money shortly. We have to create a PAC right away, and we will. And it will be called the End the Death Tax PAC. And the other PAC for the Crime Fighting Act is Crime Fighting PAC, Oregon Crime Fighting PAC.
Oregon Crime Fighting PAC.
And within 3 days of receiving any contributions, we have to have those PACs set up. We'll be setting them up in the next couple of days. But if someone really wants to send some money right away, it can be made out to those PACs, and we'll set up the PACs and a death tax PAC or Oregon Crime Fighting PAC.
Oregon Crime Fighting PAC,
and we're using the address of 2007 State Street, Salem 97301. And for the moment, we're using my law firm telephone, but we'll quickly switch to setting up another system. That phone number is 503-364-1913. I'm asking not too many people. I'd rather have you email me because we are a law office and we're trying to take care of our clients. But you're hearing this first because we're talking, and I just filed these. And these are the only two initiatives I'm working on this year. Michelle Moon and I are the chief petitioners on the death tax initiative. And we've got Michael Sewell and Frank Salerno with me on the Oregon Crime Fighting Act PAC or petition.
And, I'm going to just turn a phrase here and say both of these sound like utter common sense.
Yes.
And that's something that you've been very involved with, a center called Common Sense for Oregon. You're the president. You founded it. And it just seems sometimes like Oregon doesn't have a lot of common sense and certainly needs a lot of it. And these two initiatives are an example of that. But you've also got a number of things that you're doing in addition to your legislative work to spread common sense and craft policy.
And here, these two fit together because we're going to be dealing with lawlessness, which is affecting economic growth and the safety of the community. And at the same time, that's an encouragement to come here, to be here, develop your business, take care of your family. And then we're getting rid of the death tax. So when you are here and you succeed, we haven't driven you out of the state. So it all fits in with changing the economic environment for everybody. And by the way, the people most affected by crime are lower income people, the poor and the dispossessed.
Yep.
And they're the ones who are being ignored the most by the justice system, not because the justice system wants to ignore them, but because with limited resources, if your home is burglarized and you're poor, that's a real economic hit and you probably don't have insurance. If your car is stolen and you're poor, you've lost your transportation and you probably don't have insurance.
Yep.
Someone steals your television, you've lost your entertainment, and again, you may not be able to replace it. So when people say, well, we're trying to take care of the elites, no. First, this crime piece is helping everybody, but I'm especially concerned about folks who are hurt by so-called property crime, where wealthy folks have insurance and poor people don't, and they're hurt more than anyone else. Now, don't even get me going on what I call livability of the community. Trespass, those kinds of crimes, breaking into a car, those kinds of things also need to result in quick accountability. And on the death tax, I hope everyone realizes they can help us. And getting back to your point about common sense, right now, Common Sense Foundation does do research, analysis, and education. And it certainly has given us a lot of the information we need for this kind of activity. And that is a 501c3 organization. It's been around 15 years. People can donate to Common Sense Foundation, and it's tax deductible. And they can mail a check right now to 2007 State Street, Salem, Oregon, 97301. Common Sense Foundation. And that will help the foundation finance the work that is being done for research and analysis, not the petition circulation.
Right.
MAC has to do that. But a lot of background work has been done by the foundation over the years on these. And that research and analysis helps us make the case.
Yeah. And you guys have really had a lot of things you've worked on that are very pertinent, I think. I'm looking at the website, and there's a whole range of topics. Expand housing. We're not doing a great job of that. We just talked about eliminating catch and release. Defending small businesses, wildfire prevention. These are top issues that everybody's concerned about. This is a good segue into the legislative session in our remaining minutes, because part of the reason why you're resorting to the initiative process, just like you did decades ago, is because the state legislature, frankly, didn't address these top issues adequately. And in some cases, what little they did might have made stuff worse. So tell us what you thought about that legislative session and how it ended, and what some of the things that are still left on the table that we gotta address going forward.
I would say we had mixed results. In certain areas, I think we had success. In regard to mental health, we finally passed legislation which reduces the barriers to getting someone committed who has a serious mental health condition. Now that we've removed the barriers, though, the problem is we have not created enough facilities where people can be housed who are getting mental health treatment. Why? Because the state hospital, which provides mental health services in Salem and the one in Junction City, they're full. And why are they full? Because of criminal defendants who say they cannot assist in their own defense. They're not capable. And their attorneys assert this. And that means that they get sent to the state hospital for evaluation and treatment, trying to get them to be able to assist in their own defense. So there's over 500 alleged criminals who are in the state hospital right now, taking up almost all the beds. So there's no room for civil commitments. Well, you can have community services and you can have the like with civil commitment, and there'll be more of that with legislation we've passed. But we still are going to have more facilities for a person who needs to be civilly committed, who needs to be in custody somewhere. So we went halfway. We changed, maybe 2/3 of the way, in the sense we made it easier for a family to bring in someone in the family who's really out of it and who's dangerous to himself or others. You can get a civil commitment. And there are some community resources that we've now engaged. But if someone needs to be in a holding facility, that's a real issue now, and we need to address that. We strengthened our approach to drug addiction. And now that street drugs are again criminal, the deflection process where people who are addicted can be moved into treatment, we strengthened that this past session, and we still have accountability for those, except for catch and release.
Yeah.
If you get arrested on a drug offense, you're likely to be in the catch and release syndrome. But the deflection process moves people into treatment programs. So we did something there. With education, I don't think we did anything to strengthen the quality of education, which is a real a real issue in Oregon.
It's a real issue. Yeah.
We funded it, 11% increase in funding for our public schools. And I supported that because I know we need to pay for the schools. But in the meantime, we created more bureaucratic procedures to impose on the local school districts, making it harder for them to run their own show.
Yep.
And I think we've again restricted the capability of our teachers to have discipline in the classroom, discipline in the hallways, and to be creative in providing education. Now, I'm not on the right committees for this, and I'm not on the education committee, but I still see us as not having succeeded in strengthening the education system the way we should. We've financed it, and I'm hoping that the local school districts will make good use of those funds to try to enhance reading, writing, and arithmetic.
Which, by the way, some of the problems that we're seeing in our larger society with crime, with the justice system, we're not exactly doing a great job in how we handle discipline in our schools, which unfortunately is sending a message that what problems we're having in our larger society and our justice system are just fine. You can't learn in a classroom, and it's highly disrupted. Then the consequences are you end up with people that are less employable. You end up with more social problems, and we end up with a society, frankly, that then turns around and says, "Well, and then once you get out, you can go ahead and commit some crimes. We're just going to let you go."
It's that revolving door needs to be addressed, and that does mean we're going to have to put some more funds into public safety, and that's good with me because we'll get results. I see one of the chat room questions has to do with the transportation bill, and the challenge. That was one of our failures, and my big concern is that we need to reform ODOT. We need to make ODOT more efficient and effective. I'm sorry to see that the governor is laying off what I call the real workers, the people out there who are taking care of the roads, instead of taking a look at the administrative structure, because we need to reform that administrative structure and make it trim and effective, and have an audit process that works, have an accountability process that works. And there's a lot that we could have done which hasn't happened. Beyond that, though, people that have electric cars are not paying for their use of the highways.
Yep.
And there should be a road usage charge for electric vehicles. And to me, that's a critical component of what we do about helping fund our roads. And that's something that needs to be addressed in a special session. We need to make sure that we've reformed the operation of ODOT so that we've taken, let's go back 20 years. How many administrators did we have vis-a-vis real people out there driving the equipment, working on the road machines and all of that? I want to see a review of what I call the bureaucratic structure and how we change that so we're keeping the people who are doing the work out there in the community, and maintaining, by the way, a formula where 50% of the highway fund goes to the state, but 30% goes to the counties and 20% goes to the cities. And I happen to think that by and large, they're doing a more cost-effective job of using their dollars. So let's keep that in mind. So that was a big issue at the end. There, I think, will need to be a special session. And in a way, the governor's forcing that issue politically by laying off field workers who are doing the real work. And that's highly unfortunate.
Yeah, I've noticed a lot of headlines where they're threatening, like we're not going to plow the roads and we're not going to fix potholes, and, road construction won't get done. And they've had a problem of getting stuff done, haven't they? I mean, the Rose Quarter
Here's an example.
Yeah.
We're still going to be offering people who want to buy electric vehicles millions of dollars in a fund, and it runs out, so there's a cycle to it. Millions of dollars as a benefit for buying an electric vehicle. Why don't we stop that and put those millions of dollars into our highway operations? You see what I'm getting at?
Yeah. Simple.
So we're not only not charging them to use the roads, we're giving them a taxpayer-paid benefit to buy electric cars. I'm not against electric cars. Let them compete with every other car. But why are we giving them a special benefit at taxpayer expense?
Absolutely. And, I think that not only is it common sense, which is a recurring theme here, but I think that to some extent, electric cars are pretty heavy. Their tires wear out faster. I happen to know that. And so they involve road wear, just like all the other vehicles. So that's just logic, isn't it? I mean, it's time that we actually address this issue.
It can be done. And I'm back to when we did Measure 11 on the crime side. People, oh, it's going to be outrageously expensive. I said, wait a minute. They kept saying that all of these people that were going to be arrested and convicted were virgin criminals. They'd never done it before, and they were never going to do it again. Well, no, I said there'll be a very small percentage of bad people who will be arrested and put in jail or prison. And guess what? They won't be out there to do it again. And sure, Bigor or whatever, there's my Irish. Um, sure enough, for the next 10 years, as we pulled these people out of the recycle pool of criminality and put them in jail and prison, our crime rate went down.
Yeah.
And we can do it again and make sure people understand you do something bad and you get arrested, you're going to be held in jail until the judge checks you out. And we're not just going to say, well, we've booked you. Have a nice day.
For the release officer just to let you go. I know.
And again, that's the official statutory name of the person in charge of this. Well, then I know my mission. It's to release these people. That's ludicrous.
And you've been very involved and focused on crime victims over the years. And I think when somebody is victimized by one of these crimes that we're speaking of, they really feel violated to begin with. Then the cops don't come or don't respond with any, sense that they're going to catch anybody. And then you find out that when they do catch somebody, that person is going to face a release officer and be back out there doing it again. It really is harmful to crime victims. They should be our priority, shouldn't they?
Yes, and this is the beginning or the refreshing of a movement to hold people accountable for hurting other people, not just physically through violent crime, but also through so-called property crimes, which hurt people. And then there's the livability crimes, which hurt the community, the graffiti. Now, I'm saying not all of those are Class A misdemeanors. I get that, but people commit enough Class A misdemeanors, the word will get around. No, don't be trespassing. Don't be breaking into cars. And worse yet, don't be stealing cars or committing identity theft. And basically, we're saying we are mad as heck and we're not going to take it anymore.
Well, and now they have a way to express their voice through the initiative process. So once more, I just want to make sure everybody can get information about if they would like to engage in this. And I know there's going to be some websites and some PACs formed, but they could email Kevin at mannixlawfirm.com. Is that correct?
Yes. For a while, we'll be putting up with a lot of emails, and we're happy to receive them. So as we're getting going, and I'm hoping folks will say, "Hey, look, I'm on board. I want to support." And we have their name and their email address. It'd be nice to have their mailing address and their phone number too, so we can create a network to end the death tax and a network to end catch and release.
Amen. Well, thanks so much for taking the time to be with us here tonight, Representative Mannix. And I know you're going to continue forging ahead with this, and folks are going to want to know more as it develops. Please feel welcome to come back and talk to us about this again, because as this progresses, maybe the future battle over ballot titles, maybe it'll be time when people are going to actually sign up and circulate the petition and help the effort.
And again, not this cycle, but if I can't get the legislature to renew and refresh the initiative process, maybe we'll have an initiative to do that, and to say that we're not. It shouldn't be rocket science for our citizens to be able to get something on the ballot. Unfortunately, I'm a bit of a ballot measure scientist. I have put 8 things on the ballot over the years, and 5 of them have passed. So I do know the process. No one can claim 100% success, but that's pretty darn good. It's more initiatives passed than anyone else has done. There's a fellow who put 22 items on the ballot and got 2 passed. Well, we have a better batting average. I'm not guaranteeing anything, but I'm saying we're serious about it. We know the process, but we also know that the process has now been obstructed by a variety of special interests who do not want, they really want to prevent the citizens from being hurt. The good news is we still have a way of doing it, and we're going to do it.
That's great. Well, thank you for sharing all that with us here today. And thank you for fighting the good fight and fighting to bring common sense to the state. And please keep us updated. We look forward to hearing what happens. And of course, there will be a special session potentially. So maybe you can give us an update on that too as that develops here. I don't know. I heard July. It was a rumor, but I don't know. It's up to the governor, right?
Yes, and the thing is, she needs to have a package prepared ahead of time that has the support necessary if you're going to go in for what's usually a 1 day special session on one topic.
Yep.
And I'm happy to cooperate to the extent that we can put something together that is reasonable economically for our citizens, but also make sure that we're taking care of the roads.
Amen. All right. Thank you, Representative Mannix. Have a great rest of the week, and we will look forward to hearing updates here in the near future.
Thank you. And Kevin, I appreciate being a guest here, and take care of yourself.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And thanks everyone for watching. Please share this show with everyone you can. There's a lot of folks who don't know this and they want to know, and we can make a difference here and bring common sense just about everywhere. Have a great